Brilliant, thank you. So a very warm welcome to this evening's presentation on how to help your child move from year 5 to year 6. I'm Sarah-Anne Fernandes and I'm one of the co-founders of Smash Maths. My role is working with schools in the capacity of a primary mathematics consultant, and what that involves is supporting head teachers, senior leaders and teachers gain the maximum out of their primary maths curriculum. So I go into lots of different schools supporting teachers with the delivery of the curriculum and helping children become really confident with their mathematics learning. So it's always a pleasure going into lots of different schools, working with many different teachers and pupils and looking at different contexts and thinking how we can make maths really relevant and successful for all children. My other co-founder of Smash Maths is Trevor Dixon. Trevor is an experienced Key Stage 2 stats test marker and a UK assessment expert. He has worked for several years for the National Testing Standards Agency, and he's also written not just Key Stage 2 stats papers, but he's also been involved heavily in the ISEB test, which is for the independent and grammar school sector, and also writing 11+ grammar school papers. Together, Trevor and myself have worked on a number of publications over the years for a range of leading publishers. So some of the publications that we have written are here on screen, and they've been used by teachers and children across the country. Some of them you may recognise, so for example, the Collins Easy Learning Guides. Myself and Trevor have both authored those for children in years 1 to year 6. We've also written practice papers that are sold in bookshops in the UK to help children prepare for key assessments. Trevor and I, they really still feel very passionately about there being an opportunity to help children through learning maths in a spiral curriculum approach. And that's something I'm going to speak with you about this evening. So our agenda for this evening is going to be looking at where your children should currently be at the end of year 5. And this is the kind of national standard, so the expected standard for the average year 5 child. So please don't worry if your child is a little bit behind at this stage. It's just for you to have an idea of where they should be. On the other hand, you may have a child who's working a little bit beyond those expectations, and that's great. That might be something that you are aware of, the school is aware of, and your child's been given opportunity to extend and be challenged further in the classroom. But what I'm going to be sharing is that kind of average, the national average of where a typical year 5 child at the age of 10 should be in their learning for mathematics. I'm going to talk about Smash Maths and the spiral learning approach that I've just said Trevor and I have developed over the recent years, and how that can be so beneficial to help your child remember what they have learned in maths and improve their mathematics attainment and, most importantly, confidence with the subject. I'm really passionate about children enjoying maths and wanting to be able to independently and confidently solve maths problems, so that when they go into secondary school, they already have that resilience and skills to help them with more complex maths problems. I'm also then going to share with you the expectations for next year, so you are aware of what lies ahead and how you may want to help your children achieve those standards. So I really do hope the session is useful. Like I said at the start of this session, I've run nearly 10 or 12 of these sessions already, and we've had some really positive feedback. So I hope you too, as parents this evening, will find this a useful and informative session. So I'm sure you are aware, as parents of children who are now in the upper phase of primary, that the primary maths curriculum is broken down into 6 key topics: number and place value, calculation, fractions, measurement, geometry, and statistics. And those 6 key topics are fundamental to every single year group from year 1 to year 6. So your children have been building on their learning in each of those topics since year 1. When they progress next year into year 6, they will be introduced to 2 new topics, one of which is algebra and the other which is ratio and proportion. So next year in year 6, there will be 8 key topics. So looking now to see what your children need to know for number and place value by the end of this academic year. So this is what they should already know. So this year, your children would have been working with numbers up to 1 million. So just have a think about your child and think, oh, you know, would they be confident with discussing and understanding a number up to 1 million? Can they count in steps of powers of 10? And what we mean by that is counting in tens, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, interpreting negative numbers, rounding numbers to the nearest 10, 100,000, 10,000 and 100,000, and also reading and writing Roman numerals. So those are the objectives that were taught to your children this year for number and place value in year 5. And what I should have said is that I am aware that this evening I'm joined by a range of schools across London and the UK, some of whom are state primary and others whom are independent schools. The majority of schools, if not all schools, including the independent schools, follow the national curriculum. So these objectives that I'm sharing with you are the national curriculum objectives for year 5. And that applies to every child in all school settings. Here's an example of a place value question that children would be expected to do by the end of year 5. So you can see here that it is asking the children to think about their rounding skills. But we're not just asking the child to round a number, the question has been flipped and they're having to think about all possible answers. So when a number is rounded to the nearest 1,000, it becomes 32,000. What numbers could it be? The children are having to apply their problem solving and reasoning skills to such a question. And please note, I'll be sending out these slides to you later today or tomorrow. So you're very welcome to take notes if you wish, but all this will be shared with you via PowerPoint. With regards to calculation, calculation is made up of the 4 operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. With addition and subtraction, your children should by now be confident with using column addition and subtraction. By that we mean when the numbers have been stacked and the children are working from the ones to the thousands column, adding or subtracting the digits. Children should be working with numbers with more than 4 digits, so 10,000s, 100,000 numbers. They're working with increasingly larger numbers mentally, and what's most important is they're able to solve multi-step problems in context and deciding which operations to choose and why. And children can find that really difficult. So although they have the skill and the computational methods to be able to complete an addition or a subtraction question, what they often find challenging is being able to apply that to a problem-solving context and understanding what the question's asking. With regards to multiplication and division, by now your children should be completely confident with their times table facts up to 12 times 12. In fact, your children, especially the ones that are currently in state primary schools, would have been the first group of children who last year completed the multiplication check, the year 4 multiplication check. And that check is put in place now at the end of year 4 to make sure that your children are fluent and confident with their times tables up to 12 times 12. So just as a reminder to you as parents, is you just check the fluency of the times table facts with your children, not just the times table facts, but the corresponding division facts. So what I've found over my years of experience with working with lots of different schools and children in different settings is that children are often really good at their times table facts, but they struggle with knowing their division facts, the related division fact. So I would encourage you as parents, if you're not already doing so, to teach multiplication hand in hand with division. So, for example, I would say to a group of children, I know that 6 times 7 is equal to 42, but I also know that 42 divided by 6 is equal to 7. So do you see how I'm teaching multiplication and division side by side, or hand in hand? This year, your children would have also extended their knowledge on multiples, factors, common factors, prime numbers, prime factors, and composite numbers. They would have been looking at multiplication, 4 digits multiplied by a 1 digit, but also multiplying by a 2-digit number, so long multiplication. And that's a really important skill to secure, especially as they move into year 6 and beyond into secondary school. So just checking, does my child know how to complete long multiplication? And if they are a little bit unsure, then that might be something to focus on over the summer holidays, just so that when they start year 6, they really hit the ground running. Your children also would have been looking at division this year, and they would have learned how to divide 4 digits by a 1-digit number. So for example, 3,706 divided by 3. Your children also would have been learning about square and cube numbers. So here is an example from Smash Maths and our weekly practices, and here we're encouraging children to use their factor pair knowledge to complete this calculation. Fractions, decimals and percentages is a really big topic in the national curriculum, and as children move into years 5 and year 6, it probably is the topic which has the most curriculum objectives. And if you look also at Key Stage 2 stats assessments, so end of year 6 stats assessments, which I will talk about more later, but also if you look closely at 11+ papers or grammar school or independent school assessments, fractions, decimals and percentages always has a very heavy weighting. So actually, a lot of the fraction, decimals and percentages objectives have been brought down into the primary curriculum that previously used to be in secondary. So the expectations for primary maths has really risen in recent years, and there's quite a lot of complex learning within fractions, decimals and percentages. For example, children are having to order fractions with different denominators. They're having to convert mixed numbers into improper fractions and vice versa. They're having to multiply proper fractions and mixed numbers by whole numbers. They're having to learn about how to work with numbers up to 3 decimal places, and also recognizing the percentage symbol. So some quite challenging maths for children who are only actually 9-10 years of age. Here's an example again from Smash Maths and our weekly practices that we give out to children. And here we are in basically getting the children to apply their learning on fractions and percentages. So you can see here we have an unmarked scale, and the children are having to work out the intervals to first of all work out what fraction of water is presented in the water tank, and then convert that fraction into a percentage. So it's not just straightforward out of context questions, but it's the application of the maths. With regards to measurement, measurement continues to build on those 3 key areas that your children would have been learning in the early years of mass, capacity and length. But of course, as they've extended and gone further with their mathematical learning, more in-depth knowledge is required of them. So children would have been looking this year at conversion facts. So thinking about how many millilitres are in a litre, or how many grams are in a kilogram, Or what's the conversion back between meters and kilometers? And again, that's a really nice one to be building into your everyday conversations with your children at home in a really relaxed setting. So perhaps when you're cooking or you're traveling, you might want to just remind them of some of these key conversion facts, which can really help them when they are then having to solve problems. Often, the conversion facts are not given to the children. In fact, in all questions for independent school exam, but also state Key Stage 2 facts, the conversion fact is not given. So if children don't have those key facts in their memory to then use, that can often hinder them. So I really would encourage you to kind of remind your children of those key facts. Also in Year 5, your children would have been learning about imperial units. They would be looking at perimeter of composite rectilinear shapes. And what that means is a shape that's made up of two rectangles that looks like a T shape or an L shape. So it's two rectangles put together, and then them using their knowledge to work out the perimeter or the area. They would be comparing the area of rectangles and volume and converting between units of time. And here's an example again of a measurement question that would be pitched at a Year 5 child, where they're having to work out the length of the gap between two posts. With geometry, children would have worked a lot this year on angles. So they would be doing some really fun problem-solving questions on finding the missing angle around a point or on a straight line. They also would have been given a protractor this year, and they would have learned how to draw an angle using a protractor. I had a question recently from another parent about what other tools do children have, or resources do children have in the primary maths curriculum, and really only protractors and rulers are the only two pieces of mathematical equipment that is used in the primary maths curriculum up to Year 6. Even calculators are not allowed in the Year 6 assessments. Here's an example of a geometry question. So children having to think about the interior angles of a range of polygons and then order the polygons with the smallest interior to the largest. Statistics covers data handling. So children are having to read and interpret a range of charts, which include bar charts, pictograms, and also line graphs. What's new in the Year 5 curriculum, which your children would have been learning this year, is also how to read and interpret a timetable. And that can be quite challenging for children sometimes. So thinking about the length of a journey on a train, or how long would I have to wait for a train if I arrive at the platform at 10:30, for example here. If I arrived at Sheffield at 10:30, how long would I have to wait for the next train to Birmingham? And then children having to use their knowledge of how to work out time duration to read and interpret the timetable. So I've gone through in a very linear fashion all the objectives that your children would have learned this year in Year 5. And I've taken each of those 6 topics that I spoke about earlier in the presentation and just run through them with you. The way your children have learned all that information, though, is through this topic-based approach. And all the schools that are here this evening, I know, use the White Rose topic plans. One school, which is a partner school of ours, do use this in a slightly different way, where they have a spiral approach, but the majority of schools will follow this White Rose topic plan, where the children are learning in big blocks of learning. And as you can see here, they learn place value in the autumn term, but they don't actually come back to revisit place value in the year. They would have learned addition and subtraction here in week 4 and 5, but again, we don't come back and do addition and subtraction for the rest of the year. So what we at Smash Maths are promoting is how we can help children make all this learning stick. So as you may have appreciated from what I've just spoken about in these first few slides this evening, is that there is a lot of curriculum content for your children to take in and absorb. You know, there's 6 key topics, and each topic has a huge amount of content. And as you can see here from this curriculum map, they are being taught these topics in big blocks and not being given enough opportunity sometimes to revisit these key areas. So what we at Smash Maths do is we use a spiral learning approach that really helps children remember what they have learned and makes learning stick. So every topic, every week. So in our spiral practices, we always make sure children do a number and place value question. They always do a calculation question. They always have a fractions, measurement, geometry and statistics question. And of course, now going into year 6, they will also have algebra and ratio and proportion pulled into. So the idea being that children are continuously revisiting each area of the curriculum so they do not forget what they have learned. And it's a strategy that I have used with great success over the years with a number of schools I've supported, supporting schools moving from good to outstanding, supporting schools moving from satisfactory to good, but also, like I said earlier, helping children really improve their confidence and their results in maths. Our unique spiral approach is based on strong scientific evidence. Some of you may be familiar with this. It's the Ebbinghaus theory, which is basically the forgetting curve. And I think that applies to anyone, not just children, us as adults too. As this chart shows, if we learn something in week 1, we remember it. But if we don't practice what we've learned in week 1, over time, we forget what we have learned. We forget that new learning. And I don't think there's anyone who would disagree with that. And that can be applied to any area of our life or in any subject in which we learn. So what Ebbinghaus discovered is that if we keep on reviewing what we've learned and in spaced intervals over time, our learning retention, our memory significantly improves. So what we at Smash Maths are doing is we will introduce a new topic to the children on what they've learned. Let's say, for example, multiplying fractions, and then we will revisit multiplying fractions again, and then we will revisit it again in week 4, and then again in week 6, and then maybe again in week 10, so that over time the memory of how to multiply fractions really sticks and they don't forget what they've learned. And that's what we call spiral learning. Why do we need it? Like I said, the majority of schools use a topic-based approach. So your children are learning in big topics and they haven't got time to revisit what they've learned. Also, UK assessments, as I explained, the other co-founder of Smash Maths, Trevor Dixon, he is a UK maths assessment expert. He's written a lot of the 11+ papers and also heavily involved in the Key Stage 2 SAC papers. And from his experience and from our analysis, we can show you here that children are not just assessed on content from their year group, but they're actually assessed on content from years 3 and 4, the blue bar, year 5 and year 6. And if you do an analysis on an 11+ paper, you will find the same statistics. You will see that some of the learning comes from year 3 and 4, some of it will come from year 5, and a proportion will come from year 6. So we really want children to have the opportunity to revisit and cover all their learning from year 3 to year 6. And like I said earlier, pupils naturally forget, adults naturally forget what we've previously been taught. So I hope that makes sense. And if there are any questions around those graphs or that spiral learning chart, then please don't hesitate to ask me at the end of this session. Our unique spiral approach has recently won Highly Commended at the Teach Primary Awards. We were delighted to receive this award. We came joint second with the CBB's programme Number Blocks, which I'm a huge fan of, so we were thrilled to share joint second with them. But using our spiral approach was very much seen as an advantage to children's learning. So moving on now to consider what your children need to know going forward when they get to year 6. So as you all know, upper key stage 2 is where your children are currently sitting. They are currently in year 5 and then moving up to year 6. Just as a reminder to you, so these are the assessment points that take place during the primary learning journey phase. This year in year 5, there are no government tests as such that year 5 children have to do. But when children move into year 6, those children who are going to be in UK primary state schools, all children in year 6, of course there are exceptions if a child has any special needs, but the majority of children who are in year 6 will be required to do their key stage 2 SATs in May 2024. And that, like I say, for the majority of year 6 children. For those of you who are currently in independent schools, there isn't a government test that the school has to do as an independent school. Independent schools have much more flexibility and autonomy over their assessments, but the school will no doubt do an end of year assessment like they have done for all their year groups, an end of year assessment to work out the level and the attainment of your children at the end of their primary phase, and that information will then be used to support the transition into secondary school. So it's quite an important exit point of data. Also, for those who may be in independent schools, but equally, I've supported many parents in state schools, they may be considering 11+ grammar school assessments, which will be coming up quite soon for those of you who are in year 5, and also independent school exams. So there are more key exams taking place in year 6. Here is the topic plan coverage for you to see as parents for the year 6 curriculum. Even though the independent schools do not use the key stage 2 SATs in May, they still work following, they still follow this as their topic plan coverage. So even state schools, although they won't be doing their key stage 2 SATs here, they will still follow this topic plan coverage. But for all primary UK state schools, you can see that they're trying to get through all of this curriculum content by here in the summer term, because this is the time when children will do their key stage 2 SATs in May 2024. So we need to gain coverage of everything so that by May they are fully prepared to do their SATs exams. So just like I shared with the year 5 plan, you can see that the learning has been broken down into topic blocks, and the children are working through place value when they get back to school in September. Then they're going to be working on their 4 operations, their calculation methods for addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Fractions comes in, and then all the other areas of the curriculum are taught. So just to go through with you very quickly, some of the key objectives, so you know where your children need to be by the end of year 6. So we're not going into year 6 knowing all this. We are going to be here by the end of year 6, or hopefully by early May 2024, so they're ready for their assessments. For children who are doing 11+ or independent school exam, we would want them to have this knowledge even earlier than May 2024. So we'd need them to have this information potentially by October for those early grammar school tests, or by January when the majority of grammar school tests or independent school tests are done. So you're having to work a little bit harder to get this content in a little bit sooner. And again, I'm very happy to take questions on that at the end of the presentation. So children need to be working with numbers up to 10 million. They need to be able to round any whole number to whatever is asked of them, any degree of accuracy. They need to be able to solve practical problems, including negative numbers. With regards to calculation, the 4 operations, they will be continuing to work on long multiplication. And that, like I said, was in the Year 5 curriculum expectations. So if that is something your children are not secure on, I would really encourage you to work on that with them over the summer. Your children would also continue to work on dividing numbers, but in Year 6 they will learn how to do long division, so dividing 4 digits by a 2-digit whole number. They will be looking at common factors, common multiples, and new learning will be on the order of operations. So you may remember at school learning about BOD math, or what we now sometimes call BID math, so using the order of operations to be able to solve calculations. And here is an example from Smash Maths weekly practices, which is basically getting children to use their knowledge of order of operations, or BID math, to work out which calculation is correct. We at Smash Maths, just to flag up to you for those parents who are not currently using Smash Maths practices, provide video feedback. So for all the questions I've been showing you this evening, if your child was unsure how to solve such a question, we at Smash Maths provide video feedback that demonstrates and models to your children how to solve the question. And we've had really lovely feedback on this from parents and children as a very supportive tool to help them understand the questions. So I'll just play a couple of seconds for you so you can get an understanding of how it works.
I can see that 3 green circles have a total value of 15,000. So I need to divide 15,000 by 3 to find the value of 1 green circle. So 15,000 divided by 3, well, I know that 15 divided by 3 is 5, so 15,000 divided by 3 will be 5,000. So each green circle has a value of 5,000.
I won't play you the whole video, but as you can see, we take each word problem, or in this case, a logic puzzle, or any question, so long division, and we will demonstrate and model to the children how to solve the question. And like I say, parents have found that really useful, especially as the methods that are now sometimes used in the primary curriculum are a little bit different to how we learnt maths those few years ago. So like I said earlier, fractions, decimals and percentages continue to have a really heavy weighting in the Year 6 curriculum, and the level and expectation is just kind of ramped up even more. And again, a lot of content here used to sit in the Year 7 curriculum, but is now the expectation in Year 6. So things like simplifying fractions, ordering fractions greater than 1, adding and subtracting mixed numbers and fractions with different denominators. So an example could be adding 1/3, 2/5, and 7/15. So we have a third, a fifth, and some 15ths. And we have to find a common denominator of 15ths and then add them all up. So quite complex maths of, using their knowledge of multiplication facts to find equivalent fractions and converting fractions. They also need to multiply simple pairs of proper fractions, divide proper fractions, and also know decimal fraction equivalents. Like I said earlier, ratio and proportion is introduced to your children as a topic. So we have things like solving percentage problems, working with a scale factor, and also things like unequal sharing and grouping. So very standard kind of classic ratio questions. Here's an example of a percentage question where we're finding a percentage of an amount of money to find out the reduced price. Algebra is introduced for the first time again in Year 6. Children are expected to use a simple formula. They're expected to describe linear number sequences, solve missing problems algebraically, working with equations which have two unknowns, and thinking about possibilities. So potentially thinking about a menu and thinking about all the different options you could have for a starter, a main course and a dessert, and putting all the different possible combinations onto a chart. And a lot of this content here, so ratio, proportion, and the fractions and decimal percentages, and then of course there's algebra, are some of the key topics that would be in those independent school exams and also those grammar school tests. Here's an example of an algebra question, thinking about linear sequences and patterns. So we have here part of the pattern given to us at the beginning of the number of triangles to the number of squares, and then the sequence continues in the same way, and then we need to consider how many triangles there will be in the pattern with 26 squares. So again, if your child was unfamiliar or unsure, completely unsure of how to solve such a question, Trevor or myself would have a video there ready for your child to watch to help them unpick that. With regards to measurement, they're going to continue working with conversion of units of measurements. They're also going to be thinking about conversions between miles and kilometers. They will be working on looking at shapes that have the same area but different perimeters and vice versa. They will be looking at the volume of shapes, calculating the area of parallelograms and triangles. And here's an example of a question, assessing your child's knowledge on how to find the area of the triangle. Children really enjoy this, actually. They love working with new formulas and learning new facts and then applying it to questions like this. And here we have a question on volume, where the children are having given two different cubes, and they need to calculate the difference between cube A and cube B. And we have to use the information in the question to work out the volume of each cube. With regards to geometry, your children will continue to build on their knowledge of 2D and 3D shapes. What is new in Year 6 is that they are considering circles, so the different parts of circles, what the radius, the diameter, the circumference. They also will be finding missing angles on a straight line or around a point. They will be looking at coordinates on all 4 quadrants, and also looking at how to translate and reflect shapes. Here's an example of a geometry question, and you can see here the children are having to work out the coordinates of vertex A, where it falls out of this first quadrant here, and they're having to use their knowledge of the coordinates given to find the missing coordinates. We need to use the information in the question that it is an isosceles triangle, and so by knowing it's an isosceles triangle and using these 2 coordinate points, we can then find the missing coordinates. They're quite complex, quite tricky maths learning here. For those children who are working towards meeting the national average at the end of Year 6, so what we would call expected standard. So at the end of your Year 6, children will be graded as working towards expected standard, at expected standard, so where they need to be, and then greater depth. This type of question would be for a child who's working at greater depth, a child who's more able in maths. So don't please feel at all worried or anxious about a question like this and thinking, oh, my child would struggle with this potentially. This is definitely higher order thinking and problem solving for some of the more able children in maths. But as a maths advisor and somebody who works with schools, my aspiration is for all children in primary to have the expectation to try questions like this, and together we can really understand them and unpick them and solve them. With regards to statistics, children are looking at pie charts, line graphs, and they're also learning about mean. So what is the mean and how can we find the mean as an average? So a question here from Smash Maths on what is the mean number of counters, and then children learning how they actually have to find the mean and apply that to a question. And then here looking at pie charts and understanding what this pie chart is showing us, and then using the information in the pie chart to then answer the question. And again, I would say pie charts is more of a higher ability type question. So we at Smash Maths will be providing all our Smash Maths members a full curriculum guide at the start of year 6. So I've talked you through the majority of that this evening, but we will be sending out a complete guide in September, which parents have always said they found very useful at kind of monitoring and tracking the coverage for their children. I also hope that you might this summer consider using Smash Maths to support your children with helping their learning retention and making learning stick. Like I said, we cover every topic every week through our practices. We have a variety of packages available for parents to consider to purchase. We have a catch-up program. So if you feel your child is just not quite there yet in terms of the current expectations, we have a catch-up program to help your children get back on track for year 6. We have a keep on track program for children who are working towards meeting expected standard at the end of year 6. So you're going to work with your child to think we want to get them to a really good national average at the end of year 6. And then for those children who are working beyond national average, we have a Prepare for 11 Plus package. So we are accelerating your child's progress through the curriculum. We will get them to learning a lot of the year 6 curriculum much earlier, so they are ready for their 11 Plus grammar school assessments or independent school assessments. And what we also do with that package, it's an accelerate program. So we will also feed in some of the content from year 7, because children who are applying to grammar or independent schools will need to have some year 7 content practiced and rehearsed for those tests. As partner schools, you have a discount code, which makes our Smash Maths practices £8.40 per month. This gives you 2 practices per week, which we publish on a Thursday. They sit in your dashboard for a week for your children to do, and then the following Thursday we publish another 2 practices, and we give those practices to you every week of the calendar year, including the school holidays. So those of you who may be using our Smash Maths school practices, those are only given during term time, whereas our home packages for parents are delivered every week throughout the year, and there are 20 plus questions per week. We've had some really lovely feedback on our Spiral Learning programme. Here's a review from a parent whose child was 18 months behind their peers. She's used our catch-up programme consistently over the last year or so, and her child is now back at expected standards. So it's always lovely to see the impact that Spiral Learning can have on children's progress and understanding. And we've also had parents use Smash Maths to support them with 7 Plus and 11 Plus preparation. Here is a 7 Plus example of children who are who have been offered a place at Dulwich College. We also have a free parents WhatsApp group, which you're most welcome to join. We'd love to have you on our WhatsApp group. We use this WhatsApp group to share key ideas, tips, resources, completely for free as an information provider. So it's just a place for you to join and just to be keeping up to date on any resources or strategies that we are sharing. So most recently we had assessment information go out for all our children in year 1 to year 6, explaining the different types of assessments, the difference between a reasoning paper and an arithmetic paper. We also produced key vocabulary for all the children to really help them with their understanding. I was going to leave here for you the link to Smash Maths and your discount code. My contact details are here as well, my email address and mobile phone number. I'm always really happy to talk to parents on a one-to-one and answer any questions to really support you and your children with their primary maths. And like I said, I really do hope this session this evening has been useful. Thank you for your time.